It was just another rainy Wednesday night in Riverdale. The streets were slick with water, and the dim glow of streetlights reflected off the wet pavement. Officer Sarah Mitchell's headlights cut through the darkness as she cruised along her patrol route. The steady hum of the engine and the rhythmic swish of windshield wipers the only sound in the quiet of the night. Her shift was almost over when the call came in. A burglary in progress at Eastbrook Towers, an aging apartment complex in the quieter part of town. The dispatcher's voice came crackling through the radio. Unit 17, we've got a break-in at Eastbrook Towers. Suspect is on foot, heading towards the alley behind the building. Eyewitness claims they saw a man in dark clothing running away with a jewelry box. Suspect description: tall, male, hoodie. Suspect was last seen entering the alley behind the complex. Copy that, Sarah replied, her heart rate spiking as the adrenaline kicked in. I'm on my way. She hit the siren and made a sharp turn toward the complex. The rain had intensified, falling in sheets. The city's usual hustle and bustle seemed to have disappeared in the downpour. It was just her and the road, her thoughts racing. There was something in the air tonight, a tension, a sense that something was about to go terribly wrong. Sarah couldn't shake the feeling. By the time she pulled up to Eastbrook Towers, the scene was already chaotic. Patrol cars were parked haphazardly, their lights flashing brightly, casting an eerie glow on the slick pavement. A group of officers were standing around the front entrance, talking to a woman who was clearly distraught. Sarah recognized her immediately as Rachel Carter, a middle-aged woman with wild, tear-filled eyes. "Sarah, you're just in time," said Officer Alan Hayes, her partner for the night. He was standing near the entrance, his face taut with tension. "Rachel says she came home to find a man in her apartment. She saw him running out the back with a jewelry box." Sarah's stomach tightened. There was something in Rachel's eyes that unsettled her. It wasn't just fear. There was a flicker of something else. Something that made Sarah pause, just for a moment. "Let me talk to her," Sarah said, her voice low and steady. "You check the back exit. See if we can find a trail." Hayes nodded and moved off. Sarah approached Rachel, who was still standing by the entrance, her hands trembling as she clutched her phone tightly. "Ma'am," Sarah said gently, "can you tell me exactly what happened?" Rachel wiped her eyes and sniffled, trying to steady herself. I was just coming home. I opened the door and he was there. He was standing in the living room holding my jewelry box. When he saw me, he bolted. I didn't know what to do. I just froze." "Did you get a good look at him?" Sarah asked, keeping her voice calm. Rachel nodded quickly. "He was tall, young, wearing a hoodie. I didn't get a good look at his face, but I know he was holding my jewelry box. I think he took my grandmother's ring. Please, you have to catch him." Sarah scribbled down the description, but there was a part of her that didn't sit right. Rachel's reaction seemed off. It wasn't that she wasn't upset. It was the way she had described the burglar, as though she had seen him before, as though she was already anticipating what he looked like. "I'll get him, ma'am," Sarah said, her voice firm. "I'll do everything I can." Rachel nodded, her eyes wide, almost pleading, but there was something in her gaze that Sarah couldn't quite place. It unsettled her more than the burglary itself. She turned to Hayes, who was standing by the back exit of the building, scanning the alley. "Anything?" "Not yet," Hayes called back, looking up, "but we've got a silver sedan parked near the alley. Could be the getaway car. Let's check it out." Together, they made their way to the alley. The rain hit their faces as they trudged through the dark, wet space between the buildings. A silver sedan sat at the far end, parked haphazardly near a dumpster. It was too close to the building, almost as if it had been left in a hurry. Sarah approached it cautiously, scanning the area for anything out of place. There were no signs of forced entry, but she noticed something: a small, crumpled receipt on the passenger seat. She pulled it out and read it. It was from a gas station a few blocks away. It was something, at least. She snapped a picture of it with her phone. "This car's too close to the building," Sarah muttered, her mind racing. "Get me the security footage from the building. If this is our guy, we need to know who he is." Minutes later, the request was made, and Sarah watched the footage from the building's security cameras. The first few frames showed Rachel entering the building, then the suspect, tall, hoodie, running out the back with a box in his hands. Sarah's heart quickened. The man didn't look like he was trying to hide his face. In fact, he looked almost confident. But then, a second figure appeared in the footage, someone moving in the background. Sarah froze. It was a woman, tall, dark hair, moving quickly toward the back door. She wasn't visible enough to be caught clearly on camera, but Sarah felt a chill crawl up her spine. Another person. Hayes approached just as Sarah was finishing up the footage. "What did you find?" "There's someone else," Sarah said, her voice low. "A woman. She might have been with him. I think they were in on it together." They spent the next few hours canvassing the area, speaking to witnesses, trying to piece together what had happened. No one else had seen the woman, and no one could identify the man. But they had a lead, the gas station receipt. It was a dead end, just a generic station that sold a few snacks and gas, nothing that would link the car to the suspect. It was late by the time they finally returned to the precinct, tired and frustrated. Sarah sat in the interrogation room, going over the evidence again. Hayes walked in with a file in his hand. "We ran the plates on that sedan," Hayes said, dropping the file onto the table. "The car belongs to a woman named Andrea Thomas. She's got a record, minor charges for shoplifting a few years ago, but nothing serious. No prior burglary arrests." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Andrea Thomas. Let's bring her in." The woman who walked into the interrogation room was not what Sarah expected. Andrea Thomas was tall, with short, curly hair, and a calm but guarded demeanor. She had the quiet confidence of someone who wasn't easily intimidated. And right now, that calmness unsettled Sarah. "Ma'am, you're under arrest for burglary," Sarah said, her voice firm. "We have you on video at the scene of the crime." Andrea didn't flinch. "I didn't do it," she said, her voice steady. "You were seen coming from the building," Sarah said, not believing it. "You were near the getaway car. This is your vehicle." "I don't know what you think you saw," Andrea said, her eyes never leaving Sarah's. "I wasn't in that apartment. I was walking down the street, and I saw someone else leaving. A man. He had a box in his hands. I thought he was going to hurt me, so I ran." Sarah's mind raced. This was new information. A man. Andrea hadn't been seen inside the apartment, but the footage had shown someone who looked just like her. "I didn't do it," Andrea repeated, her voice lower now, but no less certain. "I swear, I didn't touch anything in that apartment. I was just trying to get away from him. I didn't know who he was." Sarah's gut twisted. For the first time, she wondered if she was wrong. Could Andrea be telling the truth? She sat back, trying to keep her cool. "We're going to need to verify your story." Just then, Hayes walked in. "Sarah, you need to see this." He handed her his phone. On the screen was the new security footage from the alleyway, the same woman walking quickly toward the back entrance. Sarah's heart stopped. The woman wasn't walking in the background. She was moving directly toward the suspect, who appeared to give her something before she disappeared into the shadows. Clicked. Andrea had been a witness, not a suspect. "Get her out of here," Sarah ordered. "We've made a mistake." The next morning, as Sarah sat in her car, the rain finally stopped, leaving the streets glistening in the early morning light. She stared out at the city, the weight of what had just happened pressing down on her. She had arrested the wrong woman. The real burglar was still out there, and now she had to face the truth. She had been too quick to judge, to act on incomplete evidence. She had let her assumptions cloud her judgment, and in doing so, had made a mistake that could have ruined Andrea Thomas's life. As Sarah got out of the car and walked into the precinct, she promised herself one thing. She wouldn't let her pride get in the way again. Next time, she would get it right. Sarah Mitchell stood in the empty hallway of the precinct, the fluorescent lights flickering above her head as she stared at the floor, her heart heavy. Andrea Thomas had been released with an apology, but Sarah couldn't shake the nagging guilt that gnawed at her insides. She had arrested the wrong woman. She had ruined an innocent life based on nothing more than a gut feeling, assumptions, and the pressure to solve a case quickly. As the days passed, Sarah tried to push the mistake to the back of her mind. After all, there had been more pressing matters. The case had been reopened, the real burglar identified, and Andrea's name had been cleared. But the weight of her actions lingered like a dark cloud. She kept seeing Andrea's face, the calm, measured look she had given Sarah in the interrogation room, the look of someone who had been wrongly accused but was still trying to keep her composure. The shame of it all sat like a stone in Sarah's chest, and it only grew heavier as the days wore on. It was a few days after Andrea's release when Sarah was called into Captain Daniel's office. The captain, a hard-nosed, no-nonsense woman who had risen through the ranks with grit and determination, was sitting behind her desk, her face tight with an unreadable expression. "Mitchell," Captain Daniel said, her voice sharp, "sit down." Sarah obeyed, sliding into the chair opposite the captain. She already knew why she was here. The investigation into Andrea Thomas's wrongful arrest had reached the higher-ups. The fact that Sarah had moved so quickly on the wrong suspect had caused a ripple throughout the department. The media was already starting to sniff around, eager for a story. The captain didn't waste time. "You made an arrest based on faulty information, and now we have a whole mess on our hands. The woman you arrested, Andrea Thomas, has filed a formal complaint. She's claiming emotional distress, wrongful detention, and defamation of character. And we're being asked about it in the press." Sarah swallowed hard, her palms beginning to sweat. She had expected this, but the weight of hearing it out loud was crushing. I made a mistake, Captain. I know that. I've been working with internal affairs to clear this up. We've already made a statement to the media." Daniels didn't flinch. She was already well aware of that. "I know you've been trying to fix this, but the damage has been done. People in this department are going to want someone to take the fall for this. And you're the one who made the arrest." "I know," Sarah said softly, her voice cracking with the weight of her own regret. "But I didn't mean for this to happen. I was just trying to do my job. I was under pressure to solve the case. I thought I had it right, and I made the wrong call. I'm sorry." Captain Daniels leaned back in her chair, her eyes narrowing as she observed Sarah. "Apologies don't undo mistakes, Mitchell. We're talking about someone's life here. Andrea Thomas was dragged through the system. Her name was dragged through the mud. And now there's a lawsuit on the horizon. If she wins, this department could be facing serious repercussions." Sarah's mind reeled. She had known this was coming, but hearing the harsh truth hit her like a punch to the gut. A lawsuit. If Andrea won, the department could be forced to pay a significant amount in damages, and the tarnished reputation of the police force would have long-lasting consequences for Sarah and everyone involved. "You've been here long enough to know how things work," Captain Daniels continued. "There's no room for mistakes like this. The department is already under enough scrutiny without this fiasco. You've put us all in a bad position." Sarah wanted to defend herself, to explain that she had acted with the best of intentions. But she couldn't. She knew she had failed. She had been too eager to close the case. And now Andrea was suffering because of it. "We'll deal with this internally," Daniel said after a long pause. "But you need to understand this. There are consequences for your actions. You're suspended for 2 weeks without pay. And after that, I'm putting you on desk duty until further notice. If this lawsuit goes through, it'll affect your future with the department. If Andrea wins, don't be surprised if you're looking for another job. The captain's words were final, but they didn't sting as much as the guilt Sarah felt inside. The suspension was a formality, just a small consequence for something that had shattered not only Andrea's life but Sarah's own as well. The days that followed felt like a blur. Sarah didn't even go home. She spent her time at a small coffee shop down the street from the precinct, trying to drown out her thoughts, to silence the voices in her head that told her she had ruined everything. Her career, Andrea's life, everything. She thought about Andrea, about the calm way she had faced Sarah during the interrogation. Had she known all along that Sarah would mess this up? Had she seen something in Sarah that made her realize that the system, the police, wouldn't care about her truth? There were no easy answers. The case against Andrea had been dropped, but the emotional toll on both of them was far from over. Week later, Sarah stood in the courtroom, her stomach a roiling pit. She had been asked to give a statement on the matter, and though she had expected to be just another cog in the machine, she had been called to testify in Andrea's lawsuit. Andrea sat at the front of the courtroom, her eyes downcast, her face pale. She had been through the ringer already, questioned, judged, humiliated in front of her family and friends. The press had pounced on her case, dragging her name through the mud. And now, here they were, about to relive it all. The lawyer for Andrea's case was a sharp, fast-talking man who wasted no time grilling Sarah. "Officer Mitchell, you claim you had probable cause to arrest my client, Andrea Thomas. But is it not true that you arrested her based solely on assumptions and a vague description from a single eyewitness?" Sarah cleared her throat, the words feeling thick in her mouth. She had to answer. She had to admit to everything. "Correct," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I made a mistake. I acted too quickly. I didn't verify the information before I arrested her." The lawyer pressed further. "And isn't it also true that Ms. Thomas was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time, and you had no real evidence tying her to the crime?" "Yes," Sarah said, her eyes fixed on the floor, her throat tight. "That's true. I didn't have any solid evidence. I misjudged the situation." Andrea's lawyer turned to the judge. "Your Honor, the evidence is clear. Officer Mitchell's actions were reckless, and as a result, my client has suffered emotionally, financially, and personally. She has lost her job, her reputation, and her peace of mind. I ask for the maximum penalty in this case." Sarah's head swam. The courtroom seemed to close in on her. She wanted to apologize to Andrea. She wanted to tell her how sorry she was. But the words felt useless, hollow. She couldn't undo the damage. Later, as Sarah sat outside the courthouse, her phone buzzed. It was a text from Alan Hayes. "I'm sorry, Sarah. They're coming after you." She stared at the message for a long moment before typing back, "I deserve it." In the end, Andrea won the lawsuit. The department settled for a substantial amount, and though Sarah's suspension had already been served, the damage was done. She was placed on administrative leave while an internal review took place, and the chances of her ever returning to active duty were slim. Her career, her future had been effectively ruined. As for Andrea, though the lawsuit was settled, it didn't heal the wounds. The trauma of being wrongly accused would follow her for years. Her life was forever marked by the injustice she had faced. Sarah, now at the edge of her career, couldn't shake the final thought that haunted her as she watched Andrea walk out of the courtroom, head held high despite everything. Some mistakes can never be undone. And some people never truly get a second chance.